Hello, everybody, and thank you for dropping in today. It's quite exciting to be speaking from a rather damp South Wales in the United Kingdom to, I'm sure, much warmer and sunnier climes. Anyway, I want to crack into this as fast as possible. First of all, you're probably wondering, who is this guy? Well, if you haven't been to look at my LinkedIn profile, which has got quite a lot of stuff there, and hello, Avinash. And hello, everybody. I didn't realize there's so many people getting involved here. Anyway, I've done a lot of public speaking over the years, mostly in front of a live audience, standing up, and I do enjoy it. Adapting to working on a digital platform has been quite a big step, but hopefully we've overcome quite a lot of the things that go on there. Anyway, there's a few bits of information. I started my first business when I was 12, and it's something you as a young person, you sort of absorb learning by doing it. And I learned so much about customers at that time, and I've been involved in so many things since then: electronics, engineering, heavy industry, innovation, R&D, retail, and so many other things. I do a lot of work in marketing and communications and education. And I've been involved in the internet business world since the beginning. And when you think, when was the beginning? I was sending emails in 1977. So think about it. It was opened up to the wider world when Tim Berners-Lee developed the HTML so that people could then do their own work. And that was in 1992. By 98, we saw the start of Google. And it's, whatever it is, the customer is always key. Okay, and there was a saying I came across many years ago: half the money I spend on advertising, and this was by John Wanamaker, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. Trouble is, I don't know which half. Now, the internet is supposed to solve that problem, but it's bumped into a number of problems in its own way as it's developed. Anyway, moving on. The future, we must look at the past. To see the future, we must look at the past. And I'm just going to run through quickly what's happened in the last 20 or 25 years since the real growth of the internet and the use of it in a commercial sense, plus in many other things. And it's supposed to have disrupted traditional business and marketing models. Okay, but I always ask the question, did it? And actually it didn't. I did a presentation back in 2000 to about 450 members of the Institute of Marketing, Royal Institute of Marketing, IAM, Institute of Marketing, and the whole thing about the when I was there, there were chartered members, there were illustrious people who'd written many books and instruction manuals on how to do marketing. There were lecturers in marketing. All the great and the good of the marketing world were there in this room. And what I realized within a matter of 2 or 3 minutes of starting my presentation on internet marketing was it's like they didn't know what to do. And I found, because the internet was along now, and it was like they threw all their marketing books and marketing manuals away. 100 years of marketing knowledge was abandoned because the internet is this new thing that's going to solve everyone's problem, and we'll be able to directly market out to loads of people. And it's wrong, because if you look at it, we are using the techniques that were used back in the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 30s, and the 1910s. Understand your customer, deliver what the customer's looking for. Okay, and so how do you do that in a digital environment? Well, the internet's brilliant because you can access anyone in the world now. You can set up shop and you can have customers all over the world, as long as you can fulfill the delivery side of it and make sure you have the products to sell. So the technological advances that we've had is, first of all, you couldn't have done it without PCs. dial-up was around at the time, and I don't know if any of you are as old as I am, and you remember when dial-up was about and all the noise and the speed at which it used to run. And then suddenly along came broadband. Okay, it's a new the new medium to route to market, as I just said, was the website. But everyone built websites, but they built them looking from the inside out rather than from the customer's perspective, from the outside in. So what a customer looks at on your website and what they see are two different things. Now, you'll have to do it yourselves, walk in their shoes to understand the pain of their journey, because if you don't think like the customer, you're not going to understand the difficulties that they experience in their digital customer journey. Okay, so search engines came along. Google came along in 1998, and they were the first people to actually think about the customer. Okay, and they've stuck with it all the way since. If you looked at other search engines that came out at the time, like Yahoo, and I'll use them, and AOL, when you went to the homepage of Yahoo and AOL, all you got was a whole load of information and information overload, and there was nothing on that page that was visually dominant, and this is the search box. Whereas if you go to the Google, or if you went to the Google, and if you do it again today, all you get in the middle is this box and search, and they've automated so many things. And they are thinking about their customer all the time. What does the customer come to this page to do? They come here to search for something. So they are focused on the customer, and they always have been. And that's why they've succeeded. That's why they've grown in the way they have. Okay. Then we had things like online purchasing ability. You had laptops. So everything was getting smaller. It's getting portable, workbooks, tablets. And then suddenly social media comes along, another killer app that's going to save all business and make you fortunes through social selling. Okay. And again, that business pumped up, and then it burst again. And then we've sort of seen a gradual grow to see how social media, and as people have learned, because everything starts as a free for all. Okay. And then now we've got digital currencies and the use of things to get out there. Let's look at the mobile phone, because if you think about it, so much is done through a mobile these days. Okay, so it started off getting smaller back in the 90s. So you had these little flip top things, the dumb phones, and then suddenly they started getting bigger again. The smartphone came along, and it sort of got bigger and bigger. Now they're trying to shrink it again, and then it goes bigger again. And every time you look at the smartphone, it seems to get bigger in your pocket. I don't know if you've noticed that, as each iteration of or new version of the phone gets out. But there's an interesting stuff. I got what's next at the end there. I think I was talking to a telecoms, a friend of mine who runs a telecoms company, and he's quite a big company. And I said in 2014, not 1914, in 2014, 10 years ago, I said to him, what's new? What's going to be new in phones? And he said, nothing. They can't put anything else in the phone to make it even more useful. All they can do now is improve the life of the battery, improve what sort of things they can put in there. But the phone as it stands on its own will never get, nothing else can be put into it. And let's think as well about the phone is everyone's life is stored in it. It is the most personal of things. And you can do so much with a phone now, but all it is a PC compressed into a very small device. And again, everything through apps, the use of apps, is being pushed into the phone. So you've got the phone to do all your work and everything else. It's an interesting what's happening there. Okay, societal changes. What have we seen in the last 20 odd years, or nearly 30 years now, in the change of things? It's like you're now being pushed into a self-service environment. So no longer do you have the customer that you walk into a shop and you ask somebody what you're looking for, and they go off and get it and they bring it back, and you say yes. You can ask questions about it and everything else. Everything is self-service now. If you go onto a website, you find a product you're looking for. If the information isn't there, you can't work with it as a customer. And this is one thing we need to understand: is customers will always ask the question that your website or the information on your website will not deliver, or it isn't there. They'll always want to know one thing: that it's not there. So it's about thinking about the customer. Okay, impersonal marketing, the anonymous customer. Everyone who buys, they're just a credit card number, a customer number, or anything else. There's no, it's totally impersonal. Our marketing has become impersonal, and it's important for us to start looking at the way that we approach our customers, because at the end of the day, humans buy from humans. Okay, then you've got peer pressure. Because people have joined social media platforms, they're having pressure put on other people to do the same thing, or to follow what they follow, and it's there's a big rise of mental health issues because of bullying and everything else that goes on there. You've got the influencers, how people have made a lot of money from influencing, and one of the things we've got to think about in that respect is, do they really understand what the product is? Do they really understand their customers, and why would somebody do the same as them? Okay, and you need to think about these things. Fake news, we've all been seeing it these days, and misinformation. And this is one of the things that I'll raise again before the end, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. And here we are. Is it intelligence? Okay, I'll give you a little story about the language industry. Back in 2008, I published one of my first books on internet marketing, how to get a website that works for your business. And I was asked to speak at a European languages industries conference for them. And one of the biggest topics they had on the agenda for that conference, that 3-day conference, was all about machine learning and auto translation. And all the people in the languages industry were really worried that they were all going to lose their jobs to a piece of software. The languages industry is bigger now than it's ever been, because people are trying to communicate with their customers in other countries. And whilst AI can, or these translation systems can help you to understand the other person, they're still not good enough for the idiosyncrasies of language, and especially in translation, because it's not a literal translation. It's a translation to the idioms and the cliches that are used in the other language, that those people understand what's going on. Quick example, in the UK, if someone passes away, you can say an idiom is they kicked the bucket. But in Portugal, it's over the wave. So those sort of translations just don't work. And we've seen that when companies have published something, they've translated it, and Nova, I think, is one of them, for one of the cars that's sold in the UK. But if you sell that in Spain, the word Nova means doesn't work. And you see these problems building up. So the languages industry still employs lots of people. They are using machine translation and machine learning to help them translate quicker or more quickly, but they still have somebody editing the output from that. Okay, and the invasion of the bots, I mean, that's another thing, is that people are setting up AI bots that are responding to things, and and that's where misinformation is being compounded, because the resubmission of information in a different terms is causing problems. And we've also got intellectual property issues. Okay, so a lot of people who create content, humans who create content, they have it's protected by intellectual property rights, and yet AI seems to be able to scrape that and reinterpret it and push it back out again without any compensation to the original creator. You've also got biases. Now, the biases aren't in the machines themselves, but in the actual people who write the artificial intelligence, the algorithms. Is the people who write the algorithms. And as we saw last week, Google proved the point with AI can only do what its programmers tell it to do. And a free-form AI is not possible if the programmers have any bias. So they become gatekeepers. They become the editors of the big newspapers. So they decide what you're going to read today. They decide what you're going to see as a response to whatever question you ask. And I'm sure many of you have tried this, have been trying ChatGPT and many of the other AI platforms out there, and finding that there's issues created. Now, it all sounds like, oh, this is doom and gloom from Nigel. He's been very negative about it. I'm not. Okay, because AI can be really, really successful in analyzing data that you put into it, as long as you've got your own algorithms designed to do the work suitable for your requirements. I've seen AI working exceptionally well in things like medical analysis of medical conditions to find out what is wrong with somebody. And they can do it much faster and much more effectively and more accurately than doctors can in some cases. So that's a good thing. And there's many other aspects and data that's being pulled up from that. Okay, the unconnected and the disconnected. We've got to remember as well that there's the haves and have-nots. Okay, 10%, and I'm just doing the UK information, 10% of the UK people do not use the internet, full stop. And you might think, oh, well, it's just old people. They'll be dead in a few years' time, so it's not a problem. It's all these young people coming through. Those are the ones we want to sell to. But think about this. There's a lot of young people now who are rejecting mobile phones. Okay, they don't have internet because they live in parts of the UK, and I'm just taking the UK, where there isn't a very good connection. There's no good mobile connection. And I've observed this many times when especially on holidays, when you're out in the countryside or in some remote coastal area in the UK, and you're down in the depths of a valley somewhere and you just don't have a signal there. And you see young people, 14, 15, 16-year-olds coming along, and the first day they can't get a signal, they're frustrated, they're annoyed, everything else. But after about 2 or 3 days, when their batteries have run out, they start looking around and start doing things. Okay, so this is what's the word? This is a situation that many people go into and detox, and actually they find that life seems to be a lot sweeter sometimes away from all the technology. Anyway, one of the things that I've noticed as well is that the law seems to be way behind the advances of the technologies and of the different types of situations that you see on the internet and in technology, and this is something that, do you get knee-jerk reactions? So the law swings the pendulum to the other side, and it makes it more, they become more constricting and more restricting as far as and increase censorship and control over people who want to have a free discussions on things. You've also got a lot of people who do restrict. So there's a lot of mistrust in news and institutions because there's alternative forms of news and alternative sources of information that people can find out what's actually going on. So you can see both sides of the story. Okay, and again, there's another big one, which is bullying and cybercrime. So we're going to deal with those. I want to get on to actually doing the predictions because that's where you come here from. For I think this is oops. Well, anyway, you can start reading now, but I will be going through these. One of the things in all the stuff I've said so far, it's based behind how companies are thinking and how marketeers are thinking. And do they rely on the technology to help them, or should they be thinking about actually talking to their customers like we used to in shops and that sort of stuff? And I'm lucky because I've been on both sides of this. The internet starts here, okay, and I've been on the other side of that where there was no internet. And it's something to consider when you're actually working for clients as marketeers or even working for your own business. What does the customer see? Do they fill the forms in? How much feedback are you going to get from them? And until you, this whole thing, this customer experience thing, it's a lot more in depth than I've talked about because there's a journey that they go on. Okay, and if your customers, when they start on that journey, they don't know much about the product that they're looking at, or the product they don't even know exists at this point. So when they are looking for it, you've got to put descriptors in that they will understand. I posted a quote up on my Twitter account recently that said, if you use your own industry jargon in the content of your articles or your social media postings, the only people who will understand that are people who are also in the industry. So who are you promoting to? Most of the time, you're promoting to your competitors. Think about it. Okay. Focus on core customers is another thing. Everything's generalized, even though people say, well, we do these personalized emails and personalized information. That might be Dear John or John Evans or Dear Sala Jones. That may be the title at the beginning, but the rest of the content is all generalized because no one's actually broken the database down into individual sections saying, this is a particular target market. This is a particular persona type. This is another persona type, so we have to change the message in that one. So it's about breaking it down. It's about focusing and saying, who do we want as customers? Okay, people who are becoming more selective on their purchases. Income issues, inflation in many countries, cost of living crises. It seems to be happening all over the world in various places. So people are becoming sensitive about what they spend their money on, so they're becoming more restrictive in that way. And this is one thing that needs to be thought about. Okay, if people have got less money, are they concerned about a particular way a thing is advertised, or the company's representation and what they're doing? What I call, I'm sure most of you have come across this word, virtue signaling. Okay, people are going to become more selective. Businesses, when they're dealing business to business, they're becoming more selective. I can see local businesses doing much better because of shorter supply chains. I've looked at various comments and stuff, but a lot of people now are buying locally rather than buying from halfway across the world. And we'll get into that in the next slide. There's going to be U-turns in ESG and DE&I, which, for those who don't know, it's the first one. ESG is environmental, social, and governance things. A lot of people are pushing a lot of energy into that, but they don't actually serve the customer. It's a nice to have thing for people, but as far as the customer is concerned, do I recognize myself in the advertising? Do I see myself as this person? And if so, do I want to buy this? And I think companies are starting, as it says at the end, their focus is going to return to sales and making profits, because there's this fundamental duty of directors in companies to their shareholders and their employees to do the best for the company. And that means, will it give a dividend for that company? Will the investors get their return on their investment? Or will they go downhill? And we've seen this with people like Anheuser, Budweiser, and Gillette over the last few years. And there's lots of other stories out there in the news about companies that have gone down the ESG and the DE&I, that's diversity, equality, and inclusion, and they don't actually make the product any better. And most people are not interested. If you really talk to your customers, they're not that interested. Anyway, moving on. Pause in technology for technology's sake. You think about it, some of you may be working for companies that have high levels of technology within their company, and they think, just like this morning when I was talking to these youngsters, they're all focused on selling their product. They didn't actually think much about the customer. They just said, everyone's going to buy this because they like it. But actually start thinking about your customer. Do they like it? Why do they like it? What aspect of it is better than their competitors? And that's what they want to know. That's what you've got your influencers for. They are actually going to describe that this is good or this is bad. So technologies, make sure it's useful for many people, and not try not to misread the marketplace. Okay. your shareholders, your employees will be thankful for it because the company will go longer. Sustainability is about, will your company be here in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time? Will it still be making a profit? Okay, and that's the important thing from that. I can see an increase in cybercrime. You're already seeing it. And that's down to the individual as well as not clicking on things they shouldn't click on and stuff like that. So I can see there's already quite a rise in that, but it's not going to be from people just down the road. It's going to be from people halfway around the world. And it's just purely because people fall for it. And hopefully none of you have suffered from any things in that nature. Okay, the battle of the tech tools. It's going to intensify because everyone's coming up with the same thing. Everyone's putting AI into everything these days. It's a novelty. It's going to wear off, just like social media wore off, just like e-commerce wore off, just like in the early days, the dot-com bubble, it pumped up and it burst. Social media bubble pumped up and it burst, and it's slowly pumping up again. And again, I don't want to sound negative about all this. It's just look at it from your customer's perspective, because you've got to predict what the customers are going to do in the future. Okay, and to do that, you need to understand what it is about the customer that's going to make them move from this particular way of doing something to that. The legal issues with intellectual property on AI, I've mentioned that already. Never configure, and this is one thing that people make the mistake of. They create the AI so everything becomes the same. If you look at all the images coming out from AI at the moment, they all look the same. They're all designed in a similar sort of way. It's the same. And how can people trust what they see if they think it may have been produced by AI? Because I've seen some remarkable videos of notable international people saying things that you wouldn't. It's unbelievable what they're saying, but it's all been done. Even their voice is right, their face is right, their lips are moving to the right words. It's incredible. But is that going to make customers mistrust what you're doing? And think about those things. Uber, Airbnb, Just Eat, and other apps like that are going to take a nosedive, and that's because of interference from government legislation. There's pressure on governments to reduce obesity, so they may start looking at taxing things like Just Eat and the apps for dialing up and getting the food delivered. So those are pressure points for those. So what is the way around that? How are companies going to bounce over that? Because their prices are going up, people are starting to have less money, so they aren't able to make the purchases they used to. We've already seen this. I'm sorry, I'm just reading this thing from Avinash. Thank you for your question. As technology continues to advance, what challenges and opportunities do you foresee in maintaining a balance between automation and maintaining a human touch in customer interactions? That's a thought that I've had as well. I think one of the things is that people recognize automated systems now. And again, they've become very generalized because you don't really know the customer, because the customer hasn't shared things. And one of the things I've done over the last month or so, since I knew I was doing this presentation, Avinash, is I've been looking at the way that the commentary, the articles that are going out there. And whilst I've read the articles and taken on board the points that they're making, I've also read the comments. And this is a piece of advice I'd give anybody doing market research. Read the comments, all of them, even if you don't like what they're saying, read them, because if it's about your product or it's about some competitor's product or other people's products, you get a real insight into the way people are thinking by reading those things. Okay, and it's something that is worth bearing in mind. People will be impressed to start with all the clever things that AI can do. but then the algorithms are written by one individual, okay, who probably doesn't know the company or the product or the customer that content is being created for. So you've got automation. Suddenly somebody's made one small inquiry, and now everything they get is related to that. And this is one of the things you see with YouTube and in Google. It seems to try and think, oh, I know what Nigel's looking for. I will present this. Or last week he was reading up on this, this, and this, but that was for that client. I'm doing it for a different client now, so I need a different way of approaching it. So sometimes, whilst it's trying to be helpful, it's actually countering what I'm trying to achieve. And you will find that as well. The other thing as well is I look at a video on YouTube, and next thing I'm getting advertising for something. I'm talking to somebody on my mobile phone, and the next thing I'm seeing adverts for a particular thing that I'm not interested. I just happened to mention it while I was on the phone. And it's the way that all marketing things are integrated. And most people, they go, yeah, you're right there. I didn't think of that. Have a think for yourselves. So what's happening is that the marketing industry is pushing more and more into people's lives to try and find out about them and then trying to be helpful, but actually they're not. And then people are starting to go, I don't like that. And so privacy, I think, is something that's going to start increasing, and people are going to reject all the cookies. They're going to reject the things. And it's nice to see that a lot of companies now are putting reject all in their things. But because in the past, you had to go through this very long list to delete the things that you didn't want, the cookies that you didn't want to have your information while you were on a particular website, especially newspaper websites. Okay. Thank you for that question, Avinash. I hope I've given you a satisfactory answer. X. That's a very interesting one. I thought I'd share this one with you all because I've been looking at the way that Elon Musk has been developing the satellite system for Starlink and all the other things that he's been doing. Okay, he bought X, or Twitter. It's now X. Okay, and he's also announced that he's going to have. I'll come back to you, Lars, in a short while. Once I finish this section, Elon Musk he's got the rocket company to launch the satellites. He's launching satellites, something like 10 a week or more on average. He's put, I don't know how many hundreds of of satellites up there already to cover the whole globe. Think about it. So there's this network that's not on the ground. It's run through a different operating system. It's interconnected, and it allows anybody anywhere in the world to interact with it through through a Starlink antenna and the satellite itself. Now let's think about this a bit. So now he's bought this social media platform so people can talk and have discussions and argue with each other or whatever they want to do. And I've also seen that he's now going to launch a search engine in competition with Google. So you think about it. He could have an internet that's separate to the one we have on the ground. Think about it. So what are the potentials for developing product that can technologies that can be used within this separate system? Okay, but also he will have all the information about what the activities are and where things are going. But you'll be able to access it from anywhere in the world by the time he's finished. So think about that. How can you, a business, if you were in technology, how can that fit in with all that? There's another thing that's been going on for the last, since the Evergrande ship collided or beached itself in the, sorry, I'm going to come back to this in a second. Lars, as people get more interacting with ChatGPT rather than Googling for issues, how will it change where you get new customers against traditional Google ads? Yeah. I think you're going to have to go back to building your own audiences through social media. It's about getting out to your audiences and producing content that people want to share. So humor comes in a big way. I don't know about. I'm not sure what part of the world you're from, Lars, and I don't want to make any assumptions. But if you think of the advertising, and again, I don't want to make an assumption about your age, but if if you were born in the early '80s, the advertising you'd have seen before the internet came along is highly humorous, is very humorous. Or Denmark, there we are. Yeah, you've got some really funny advertisements that you used to have on the television then, and hopefully you still do. And that's what made people remember things. Okay, and I think humor is going to rise up as well in the way people promote themselves, because people like to have a laugh, and everyone needs a laugh these days. So I think it's about building your audiences through humor, through direct information. And also about understanding your customers. I'm sure, Lars, you do things like personas. You develop personas for your different customer groups. And I think another one, like I said at the beginning, is who do you want as customers? Again, if you go in the fast-moving consumer goods, everybody, if you can. But when you're in specialist industries and specialist things, you're saying, oh, I need this particular type of customer because nobody else is interested in buying this. Wealthy people, middle income people, because they are with certain amount of disposable income. So you have to appeal to their ideas and their needs and their visions and everything else. Okay, hopefully that's helped a little bit. If you want to get in touch with me through Twitter or whatever, I'm quite happy to follow up with an answer later on after this session is finished. Local sourcing and supply chains will grow, replacing imports from China and the Far East due to increased shipping costs and blockages in the Panama and Suez Canal. I've read that one out because I want you to understand it. We saw a couple of years ago the Evergrande ship getting stuck in the middle of the Suez Canal and the backlog of content coming through. And let's think about this for a second. If we go back probably 5 years, and we think about it, you could go online, you could order something from China for a few pence, and it would be with you in 2 weeks. It's all changed. It's not a few pence anymore. It's quite a lot more. It takes a lot longer to get to you, especially if it's coming from the Far East. And we're currently experiencing problems in the Suez Canal through the Red Sea and around Yemen with the boats being fired on. And also the Panama Canal has dropped 30% of the ships going through because they've got a lack of water in the reservoirs or the lakes at the top in the middle of Panama. So they've gone from 40 odd boats a day down to less than 30. So that's strangling international supply chain conveyor belts. Okay, in the UK, and I don't know about Europe, but in the UK, for the last 5 weeks, we haven't had tea because of the problems in the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. And suddenly now, all the boats that were going that way, they're now going around South Africa and come up the Atlantic, but it takes longer, it costs more. And that's what I'm seeing is these issues. Now that's for stuff that's supplied by the Far East, India, Sri Lanka, where tea comes from, and other countries in that part of the world supplying Europe for tea. So tea prices have gone up in the UK, shelves have emptied, and now suddenly those ships that went around South Africa, they've arrived. And I noticed yesterday when I was shopping with my wife, there was lots of supply of tea. It's all back in there, and the prices come down again. So that's just tea. What about all the other things that people are buying from China? Large machinery, cars, everything else. It's now got to do this extra long journey around the Cape. South Africa, around the Cape there, to get to Europe, to get to the markets, to get to them to the east coast of the United States, because they're avoiding going through the Panama Canal because there's a blockage there. So think about these things as far as supply chains are concerned. So what's the answer to that? We start building our own companies again. We start building or investing in new production, and we're seeing a lot of that happening in the UK. I think Tata have just announced a new battery company being built in the UK. They've announced a location today, 4,000 jobs created. So and then there's the supply chain into that as well. So it's worth looking at all these other things going on, because it could affect your clients. It could affect the people you're working with. Anyway, data analysis. You've got to have data. How can you make decisions if you don't know what the hell's going on? But data comes in many forms. One of the things with data you extract from activities of your customers online and in the internet, on mobiles and everything else, is that it records what people have done. It's very difficult to predict what people will do. And remember this one fundamental thing. There are far more people out there who do not know your product or your service or your company exists, or even you exist, than do. Okay, there's far more. How do you get to that market? How do you get to those customers who haven't heard about you, who haven't heard about your product? And I think that's where we need to start thinking about who our customers are, where are the markets that we're missing, and should we change our product slightly to suit that particular market so we can continue selling and growing our sales, growing our business, and growing our exposure. Okay. The use of AI enhanced tools to analyze the data will see market share increase. Okay, lack of understanding and the reliance on the perception that AI is always correct, and that's one of the dangerous things. Is people say, "Oh, this is fantastic," and I draw that information from a colleague of mine who works in the university, and he works on intellectual property, on plagiarism, and various other things within the university, and it's his job. And he's been looking at AI with a magnifying glass in recent months. And it's important for you to understand that a lot of people are just using AI to create reports and then publishing them without editing them first. So somebody who knows nothing about a subject can produce an article, publish it, and it's not going to work for them. And that's an important thing to realize. You've got to edit it. You've got to know your subject so that you can tweak whatever it creates and edit it, whatever AI creates, so that you can make it, so you can publish it. That's for articles. When it does analysis of data, there's some great things that can come out of it. Early users will, I think, find that make many bad decisions as a result of believing the stuff that comes out of AI, because they trust it. And I think there's going to be a bit of a rocky boat probably in about 12, 18 months time. There's another one that's worth thinking about, electric brownouts and blackouts. We've seen them in the States. I think we're going to see some in Europe because of the energy issues. And I think we're going to see some of those things, and that's going to cause connectivity problems. And customers will revert to older systems. And what are those older systems? They're going to go to the local shop, okay, or supermarket, and they're going to walk around and they can select what they want. And that's because they can drive their cars and everything else. Okay, so that's something to watch out. Demand for robotics, if you're working in robotics and all the software that goes with that and the technology that goes with that, excellent, because I think robotics are going to be involved in the next generation of factories. Because anybody creating a production line now will jump ahead of all the other production lines they've had in the past. So there'll be less people working on it. There will be far more, less people working in the production lines, humans, and there'll be more robots doing all the mundane work. And the one thing about robots is once you've set them up, they might be a little bit slower than a human being, but they will keep on going 24/7 as long as they've got electricity to run them. Okay, and as companies in Europe start reshoring their manufacture from the Far East because of supply demand, then I think we're going to see a lot more of these state-of-the-art, much better factories. Okay, and then a little one at the end is the VR and AR worlds. I draw your attention to the 3D television and 3D cinema. Back in the 30s, one adventurous or vanguard or innovative cinema producer started seeing if they could make 3D films. And they went to the expense of creating a camera. They tried it and it flopped. It was great, a bit of novelty to start with, but it wasn't. Nothing was going to go down that line. Later on, then when television came along, I think there's been 2 or 3 attempts over the years. The most recent one being in the 80s, 2000, 2010. Big push on this is the best thing since sliced bread. 3D televisions. Okay. I think VR and AR are going to have a similar thing. When it's for entertainment, it's not going to cash on as much as it did, mainly because of the cost. And if we look at the new Apple headset systems that they're just launching now, we're talking about $4,000 a pop, which is way beyond most people's money. And will people produce stuff for those? And I think it's an interesting one to watch, and I think it'll take a while before it does catch on. I think in certain circumstances in industry, VR and AR is a good way forward. Anyway, questions, please. Okay, but I'm just going to shoot on a final thought. The business owner is always looking out and biased to their own cause. The customer is always looking in and biased to their own cause. Give yourself the time, and this is an important aspect, the time to see it from their side, whether you're the customer or whether you're the company. So, thank you. Any questions?
Okay, Nigel, thank you very much. Thank you for your insights, your ideas, predictions. It was so fascinating to listen to them. Guys, it's time to send your questions to the live chat. So, but I have a question for you. Yeah. What are some effective ways to build trust with customers in digital interactions? What do you think?
As I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, the internet is an impersonal, anonymous, self-service environment. It's quite difficult, and this is where social interaction counts. Whether it's through giving commentary like this, and people can see who you are and they can listen to you and they can make their own judgment call. When you're selling fast-moving consumer goods, I think that one is a bit of a different story, because it's a numbers game there. But when it comes to specialist stuff, specialist equipment, specialist technology, specialist services, you've got to understand the customer in a really deep way. And then engage them through conversation. If you think about it, in the past, when we went out to networking, we'd meet at some event, we'd shake hands with somebody you never met before, there'd be an exchange of business cards, you'd have a conversation, you'd offer to help them with something, or you meet them again at a second conference a year later or another conference, and then that relationship would build up. And if you think about it, most of us have relationships with people that we met in school or university. A lot of people forget their friends that they met in university, but this is one of the best networking establishments ever, because all those people are going to end up working in companies that your company may need to supply to, or may have an opportunity for employment in the future. So it's about those relationships, and the longer the relationship, the better the trust is. Building trust in a short way, just make sure you don't say things or do things that are going to contradict what you're trying to achieve, so that people then trust you. You have to maintain it. You can't just it's like taking 30 years to build a reputation and destroying it in 2 seconds because you publish something that is wrong. It's about thinking in that way. So trust is a hard one to build up, but it can be done. And again, things like people writing reviews. If someone's written a review, it's worth far more than just a tick or 4 stars or 5 stars with no explanation. get people to write stuff and use those, but also look at the ones who give you a 1 star and why they complain, and be seen to do something about that. So that helps them. Okay, that hopefully that helps you all, Elena. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. I can't see any new questions in the chat, so it seems you have covered all the questions our viewers sent to the chat. So it's almost time to finish. Yeah. Nigel, do you have anything to add or highlight before we end?
Read the comments. Give yourself time to think about your customers and about who you want as customers and how you can make life easier for them. People are instinctively lazy, so the sooner they can get somewhere, the better. But you've got to explain their information in their language, in your content, so that they understand it. You've got to teach them about how it's better for them to use yours, not somebody else's. And don't make the mistake of publishing content that is full of jargon that only our competitors will pick up on. There we are.
Great. That makes sense. Thank you very much. Guys, connect with Nigel on LinkedIn, follow SendPulse social media. If you have any questions, connect with Nigel on LinkedIn or via X Twitter. Here are links to Nigel's profile in the live chat. So once again, Nigel, thank you for your time and your ideas you've shared with us today. It was fascinating to hear. Again, thank you all guys who for joining. We appreciate your time and engagement throughout this webinar, your questions. Keep an eye on our social media for updates on future webinars and events. We look forward to having you join us again. Thank you, Avinash. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.